Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Aha Moments with the Koi. I am Gwen Heiser, owner of Lavender Koi Yoga in Berlin, New Jersey, and today we're going to talk about the second yama, which is Satya. Satya means truthfulness, and it can get a little risque because truthfulness could be a little dangerous at times. So let's see what it's all about. Let's dive in. So Satya, truthfulness, our second yama. Again, I'm going to be referencing a lot of this discussion around this amazing book that Deborah Adele has written. And again, I highly recommend getting it. And again, I am not being paid to say how amazing this book is, because it truly is. And I have used this book to practice the yamas and niyamas for years in my life, and it's just a great, down to earth, very relatable book. So I will be referencing a lot of these teachings from this book, because really she has perfected the explanation of these yamas and niyamas. So the second yama, truthfulness. Again, hearing this, I think, all right, don't lie, don't tell a fib. But the meaning is a lot deeper. And like I said in the beginning, it can get a little risky because the jewel of Satya isn't safe, but it's good, right? So just to reference a quote by Carl Jung, who was a psychotherapist, he says, "A lie would make no sense unless the truth was felt to be dangerous." So why do we lie? Right? That is a great question to ask ourselves. Why are we manipulating the truth in order to have a specific outcome? Right? So that's a great breakdown of the self, right? And realizing, how much truthfulness takes a hold of just the way that we act in our day-to-day lives. So why do we lie, right? One of the biggest ways that we can start taking a look at this amazing practice of Satya and being truthfulness is taking a look at ourselves, but also relating it to others, right? Because most of the time, this jewel really works with the self and other people, right? So the first thing we're going to start to take a look at is being real rather than being nice. Right? So there's another beautiful sage that says, "Don't trust nice people." Right? So when I read this, I thought to myself, well, I'm a nice person. But when I started to think about it, I started to think about past experiences where people were very nice to me, but I felt that there was an intention behind that niceness that wasn't good, right? So watch out for overly nice people. And so there's two different kinds of nice people. There are the very genuinely nice people, right? Who, kind of wear their heart on their sleeves. And their intention behind their actions is pure. It's good. Those are nice people, right? Those are the people, right, that will not lie to you in order to get something out of you or manipulate a situation to get something out of you. They will actually be real with you. Those are the nice people, right? So, two different kinds, right? The nice people that are acting with right intention, and then there are nice people acting out of ill intention, right? So, for example, people are nice to your face and then turn around and talk about you behind your back, right? That is, watch out for those people, right? Another instance, recalling in my past, I was a food photographer and food stylist for 13 years. And I worked for a family-owned company. And I remember sitting in the lunchroom one time, and I was preparing some food to take a photograph of. And I remember the owner of the company coming in with a group of people that he used to eat lunch with. And I remember him talking about what I was doing, kind of like to the whole room. And I could tell he was perturbed because I had just spent a ton of money on all this food to take a photograph of it. And the food was fresh clams, right? So I remember just sitting there doing my work, and it just really bothered him. And he would get into these moods every once in a while where he was just like don't spend money, right? So him seeing me spending a lot of money when I could have not used clams, which were expensive, I could have used something else for the photograph. It was really bothering him. So I remember him coming up behind me and kind of like massaging my shoulders and laughing and, making a joke about the clams, and there were oysters there as well. And I just knew that he was being way overly nice, because later I was going to hear about it through my boss, that we couldn't be buying these expensive things anymore for these photo shoots. And that's exactly what happened, right? So watching out for nice people means that really paying attention to the energy behind the niceness, and making sure that we are in a place where we are observing it, but also protecting ourselves at the same time, right? So knowing that someone is acting out of an ill intention, they are not showing up for the truth of the reality of the situation. And being able to do that takes a lot of strength, takes knowledge, it takes wisdom. And it takes a genuinely good person to accept the truth, right? Another way that Satya, how we work with it is, with other people, is, someone who is your really good friend, right? And you're going out, right? And this happens to probably, more women than men. But you get this new outfit and you're like, I am looking good. And then your girlfriend comes to pick you up, you walk out, and she's like, ooh, hey, your outfit's great, but it's not very flattering on you, right? And you say, oh, really? Like, it doesn't, look good on me? And they say, well, it's just not flattering to your shape, right? So maybe you want to pick something else to wear, and don't worry, like, I'll wait for you. I would much rather my girlfriend tell me that than say, oh, you're looking good, come on, let's go, and then, not be presenting myself the best way that I had intended to present myself, right? So these are just small examples of the ways that Satya can show up in our lives, and understanding the difference between someone being real with you and truthful with you, rather than just being nice just to be nice. And listen, we have all told white lies just because someone, is excited about something. And that white lie, right, or that truthfulness, doesn't really hurt anyone, right? That is a big thing, with my kids, where, especially one of my children, who I have to tell him, you don't need to correct everybody all the time. And he's very confused by that, because he's like, why? They're wrong. And I say, well, you can correct people in a very genuine way. But at the same time, if that person's really excited and there's no harm in letting them go along with what they believe, right, then let them do it, right? So those genuine nice people have right intention around their actions, and those fake nice people have ill intention, meaning that they have a reason that might not be good for how they are acting, for what they are saying to you. Right? So just being in the know around that difference, when we say, because there really is a fine line, and sometimes we will say things, subconsciously, like not realizing, oh, I really want this out of that person, so I will manipulate the situation to be able to get that out of that person, right? We see this a lot because if we're under pressure, right, and we want a specific outcome to happen, that's when we start to manipulate people, and kind of like lie a little bit. We see it a lot, in the workplace. If there's a big project that needs to be done, there might be some manipulation there, just so that we can kind of put the fire under our coworker to maybe like get that work done. Maybe like say, uh-oh, the bosses are really looking at you and hoping that you perform well in this project. And maybe the boss has never said anything, and you're just telling that person that so that they will step up to the plate, right, and do their job to the best of their ability. Friends, or frenemies, right? Someone could be, jealous of you, and they could start spreading just small little rumors about you, just because they're jealous of you, and they want you to hurt a little bit, or not be so successful, and so they'll try to bring you down, right? And some people, not necessarily understand that they do that, right? We can't assume that everyone understands that the manipulation comes from, specifically knowing what they're doing when they're trying to manipulate you. I've met a myriad of people that don't know, right? And when it's kind of, you know, uh, laid out in front of them, they're like shocked and be like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to do that." Like, you know, um, so so we really have to, don't go up to somebody and like point the finger at them, like you're trying to manipulate the situation in that way, because then at the same time, you're being real, and you're also assuming too, but not in a compassionate way, right? That we should be holding, people, right? So, um, why do we lie, right? Why, what is the purpose, right? There's so many, right? Big, small, everything in between. And getting ourselves into the know around our tendencies is going to really help us work with this beautiful jewel of truthfulness. So, being able to show up and work within truthfulness, it takes integrity, it takes strength, it takes wisdom, right? Knowing all that stuff around yourself. So being real is acting within a moment that is not predetermined with right intention, right? So whenever we have expectations of a moment and they're not met, we are not entering into that moment with truthfulness because we're expecting something specific out of that moment. And truthfulness is right on that same line of what is reality, right? Truth is reality. And the way we really start to understand what reality is bringing ourselves to the present moment, because the present moment is truth. So the more we act within the present moment, not holding on to any expectations, the veil of illusion around truth will start to expose itself, right? So whenever we are not working with the present moment, right? We're moving about our day, we're in our heads, we're thinking about stuff, but we're still in action. That is that slippery slope where we can get caught in non-truthfulness because we're not paying attention, right? And if we are in a space of a tendency, then we really have to practice keep coming to the moment, because if our tendency is to manipulate the situation for ourselves, then we are working along that fine line between self-expression and self-indulgence, right? So that's the next place that we're going to, understanding the difference between manipulating reality to suit ourselves and acting within the terms of self-indulgence. That is self-indulgence. That is non-truthfulness, right? And again, these things sometimes show up very subtly in our day-to-day activity, and sometimes they are big, impactful things that happen to us that cause trauma around us, and then we'll have some triggers, right? And especially if we have a multitude of triggers, then we're going to be attaching ourselves to those triggers, and then it'll be very difficult for us to see the reality of the situation, the truth within the situation, right? So being real asks us to live from a place where there's nothing to defend and there's nothing to manage. Okay, so we need to ask ourselves the question, the really good question, what is driving us to distort or say yes when we mean no, or distort ourselves, or silence ourselves? And again, as Carl Jung writes, what is so dangerous in the moment where we are choosing to lie? Right? It's a choice. So, self-expression versus self-indulgence. I recently discovered a TV show called Love is Blind. So the premise of the show is these singles, men and women, want to find love. And they have these things called pods that the guys live on one side and the women live on the other side. And then they kind of get to know each other in these pods. And they can't see each other. They can just hear each other. So they spend time just talking, just to get to know each other without seeing each other. And they eventually get to a point, and again, it's a reality TV show. They get to a point where they think they're in love, and so one of them will propose to the other. Usually the guy proposes to the woman, and then the woman says yes, and then they get to meet for the first time. So that's the beginning of the show. And then the rest of the show is them working and trying to figure out if they are actually in love and if they want to get married at the end of, and I forget however long they get to spend, maybe like a month or two together. So what I found was interesting about the show is that they were all good in the pods. And all of the couples, after they were out of the pods and after they were on their honeymoon or engagement honeymoon, and then got back to reality, they all said something's different. Right? Something changed from being in the pods to seeing each other and then trying to get to know each other that way. So I found this so interesting because what happens, right? We all know when we're in a relationship or when we meet someone for the first time, it's not like you are giving your whole self, right? You're giving a part of yourself to that person. You're giving them glimpses into your unique personality, right? I know when I was dating my husband, before we got married, I wasn't gonna just give it all out and be completely raw with him. I was still trying to figure out, what was appropriate and what he liked. So that's what was the change in the show, right? They saw each other, and then once they saw each other, what happens is we put on this persona and work towards that persona, right? We want that person to view us in a certain way. So that's how we try to act. And then we don't get that rawness or that vulnerability because that person's staring at you. They're right in front of you. And if you are not presenting yourself the way that you believe that they want you to present yourself, then the truthfulness starts to fall by the wayside and we become more self-indulgent in this way than showing up and being our true authentic selves. So self-expression with rawness and truth behind it versus self-indulgence. When we habitually silence and distort ourselves, right? We begin to lose our lust for life, and then we start to look for other ways to fulfill us. So know that when we are less truthful in our life, it's like chipping away at ourselves because we can't deny the self, right? We can work real hard to manipulate and put a presentation together for the world if we want to, but that takes a lot of energy, right? And guess what? You were born with this beautiful, unique personality. Only you have that personality. And in the space of time, you are one. You are one and unique. So why would you rob the world of your beautiful uniqueness, right? It doesn't make sense. The universe created you to be you, right? So, what gets confusing and what starts to distort all of this is from the shoulds of groups that we belong to, the shoulds, the should nots, the ideas that we have in our own head, how we should be in our life, the shoulds and the should nots. So let your unique personality shine. We forget so much of our life is meant for us to be on this earth to self-express in a way that no one else can or no one else could ever. So be uniquely you and shine. I remember there was an interview I watched many years ago with Bob Marley, the king of reggae. And the interviewer has asked Bob Marley, and this was around the time when reggae music was starting to become very popular, and it was starting to make its way into the States and into Europe. So the interviewer asked Bob Marley, are you afraid that your sound is going to be stolen? People are going to start, recreating your sound. And Bob Marley just responded very simply by saying, them know it, but them cannot do it. Meaning that, it comes from a very truthful, unique place within someone. And if you're trying to recreate it out of self-indulgence, it's not going to work. It has to come from that beautiful place of self-expression. So, self-expression shows up in many forms, right? Just like everything else. And there is a fine line that can be crossed when we start to look at the shoulds and should nots, especially if we belong, like I was saying before, in a group, right? Or if we are listening to society's ideas on how we should be, right? Lots of shoulds in society, right? So, for example, this is a big one. When a individual hits a certain age, let's say 30, okay, what happens? People at 30, if they're not where they think they should be in life, they start to get down on themselves, right? But does everyone's life look the same? Does everyone adhere to a specific time frame of when they should, get married or have kids, and even if they want to do all that? That is society's idea on how a human being should be, like a time frame in their life. But that doesn't work for everybody, and it shouldn't work for everybody. And there should be no societal time frame that we should adhere to, right? I mean, in reality, that doesn't really make any sense, right? Again, we are these unique lights of life that should be doing what is driving us to live, our passion, right? And if our passion is not within the confines of what society tells us we should be doing, then we're frowned upon, right? Or we even do it to ourselves, right? So make sure that you are living your life, the one that you want to live, and not doing what society tells you you should be doing. I remember I was in a Target one time, and this guy was singing. It was just a person in the store singing at the top of his lungs because his jam came on the radio or the loudspeaker, and he was singing his heart out. And I just smiled and enjoyed watching this person express themselves so raw and so genuine just because they felt moved to. I took a look around at everybody else, and everybody else was like rolling their eyes, making judgments in their head. You can see them making judgments in their head about this person. Maybe they're crazy, or they are crazy, thinking those stuff like that because that person was just, not acting the way that they should be acting in society, right? It's silly, right? When we really look at it from this perspective, from a rawness, from a truthfulness perspective, really, right? Be yourself, right? You do not want to get to the end of your life and have to be there and say, oh, I didn't live Gwen, or I didn't live whoever you are, right? You want to live, right? And be you, right? So if we are in a group, maybe it's a group of friends, maybe it's a group of belief systems, and that group is keeping you from growing and evolving as a person, then it's time to take a look at that, right? A human being's inert feeling within themselves is to belong and to grow, right? So if we are connected to a group or community that says, no, don't be shining your light, right? Don't be doing those things that you love to do, then that's a conflict against your self-expression, your truth, your rawness. So that's when we have to cut ties, right? I see this a lot because I teach a 200-hour yoga teacher training program. I see this a lot with these individuals that want to become yoga teachers. And what happens is a lot of their friends and families don't understand the journey that they have chosen to partake in. And it is a journey, because anyone who's ever taken, especially my teacher trainings, it is a breaking open of the self. You got to get in there, you got to get dirty, and to be able to get clean, right? It's like that lotus, no mud, no lotus. And that's how our teacher training program is. We learn a lot of yoga philosophy. We learn a lot of tools and ways to understand the self. And people who are living in the dark don't get this, right? They don't understand it. And when human beings don't understand something, they kind of pick it apart to try to make more sense out of it, or approach that person with ill intention because, again, they don't understand it. They don't understand what that person is going through. And the reason why all of the individuals that go through teacher training together form this bond is because of the community that is formed within that breaking open of the self and being so raw and so truthful. It's a beautiful experience. It's a beautiful energy exchange. It's a way for you to, really find out who you are. And again, if those people in your life are saying to you, this is stupid, you shouldn't be doing that with your life, you shouldn't, like, what are you talking about? The universe? What? If they are not letting you evolve and grow and transform, then again, cut the ties. You can cut them. It is your choice. But you do have those incredible people in your life that are like, I don't understand what you're what you have chosen to go through in those 8 months, but I'm here to support you. And those are the people that are supporting you in your process, but also allowing you to grow. They are there for you. They are witnessing your growth. There's so many people that go through the teacher training program that, come into these really long weekends that we spend together, and they'll be like, my coworker's like, what have you been doing? You look great. Or you're smiling so much more. Or the people that live with them in their home are like, oh my gosh, like you're so happy. When we start to dive into the self and realize the self, that beautiful process of unfolding starts to cleanse the self. And when you clean out all that muck, right, then that lotus is there, right? That beautiful flower glistening in the sun. And that's you, right? So that's why we do this work, right? That's why we start to practice and really understand, especially the yamas and the niyamas, right? Because it is an unfolding of the self. And when we unfold ourselves, we allow ourselves so much beauty, so much strength, right? So it got off on a little bit of a tangent there. So going back to our shoulds and should nots, the rules that we set up, the groups and communities that we belong to, make sure that community is allowing you to grow, because connection with others and evolving of the self is life. So another way that we can take a look at this self-expression and self-indulgence and our shoulds and should nots. I talk a lot about rules that are set up in society that we truly believe that we should follow, right? Because, rules create a level of comfort around our life, right? And again, working with this fine line of rules going from self-expression to self-indulgence. So my oldest son takes a keto, which is a self-defense practice. The lineage is from Japan. And so my son's sensei, who lives in Japan, he is an older gentleman. I think he's in his mid to late 80s. And he comes over to the U.S. A couple times a year to take a look at the school and make sure all his schools are acting appropriately, and just to visit, right? And just to share his wisdom with his schools. So the senseis that work with my son at his dojo tell me stories about the master sensei, and he's a very quirky, unique person. He is, and I have never heard this before, but he sets up extreme rules on how to interact with him, and he has strict rules for himself. So when I first heard this, I thought to myself, well, rules, why are there so many rules? But after thinking about it for a while, I get it, right? He is not setting up these rules to manipulate other people to serve himself. He is setting up the rules for these other individuals to say, this is how I am, and by telling you these rules and you adhering to these rules, it's going to negate any questions that we might have, right? You act this way, and that's it, right? So it's okay to set up rules for yourself. And I actually think this is a very healthy thing to do, because the way we act, and not sure if you realize this was kind of a hard day for me when I realized this, is we create everything in our life. So we create how people treat us, right? So, by setting up these rules, right, it's very clear how we want to be treated, right? It's not a self-indulgence thing, it's a self-expression thing, right? Because it's not out of ill intention. I'm not telling you to manipulate anything, right? This is how I want to be treated, right? So it is like the rawness of truthfulness, and you're putting it right up front, right? You're not even shading it in any way. You're saying this is how it is, and this is the truth of it, right? So maybe we need to create rules for ourselves, right? So that we don't have to question, right, any of those things. When I opened my yoga studio, and I had a big event, a big vendor event. And there were a couple people in there that were just like very difficult people. And they like kind of dampened the whole thing. And they weren't listening to the rules, right? They were kind of changing things in between. They were becoming difficult. So after that, I set a precedent for myself, saying I will no longer work with difficult people, because difficult people come with unnecessary stressors. So if I can eliminate that, that is my rule, that is my boundary, then that's it. I don't have to question it. And it is a form of self-expression, because I don't like unnecessary stressors. Like, I don't like it. They're unnecessary. They don't need to happen. So I'm going to eliminate them from my life, right? So setting up healthy standards for yourself is another way that you can work with this beautiful jewel of Satya. So the next thing we're going to start to tackle is staying true to yourself, right? And this really does work deeply with nonviolence, Ahimsa, and Satya. And you're going to notice that as we work through all 5 of these yamas, they all work hand in hand together, right? And they create this beautiful place of understanding that we can always go to, right? When we are in our life. So if our group or if our community is not being respectful of our uniqueness, of our personal growth, then it might be time to find a new community. We, as human beings, tend to shed, right? We shed things that in our life that no longer serve us. So if we lose a friend, or if we miss out on an opportunity because we are in this personal growth momentum, know that the universe has a beautiful way of helping us shed those things. At first, it might look like, something devastating, losing a friend, especially a really close friend. That's very devastating, right? But if that friend is keeping you back in your life, it might mean that they just need to go away for a little while, and maybe they will come back into your life when they're ready to be able to support you. And this goes both ways. If you are acting in a way of keeping your friends back out of fear that you're going to lose that friend to something else, that is a self-indulgent act, right? That you are manipulating that person because you're scared of losing them. Right? So please be careful of your actions as well, just not the actions, that are being placed on you, right? Because, even though we're doing this beautiful self-work, we are human beings as well, and we're not always right, right? So that's what truthfulness is, being able to see a situation with such clarity and such rawness and truth that we get it, right? So, staying true, unfortunately, is usually the harder path to take, right? So, like in the beginning, when I said, truth isn't always easy, but it's the best. It's the best way, best path traveled. Okay? So, staying true to ourselves is so important because, we choose safety a lot of the times. So, again, sometimes we have to put ourselves into the fire. We're not going to get burned in the fire, but we might burn up some things that are no longer serving us. And especially if it is with a community or a group that wants to put you in this little box, and it doesn't want you to leave that box. When you choose to stay within those confines of safety, you are dulling yourself. You are picking apart and pieces out of yourself. And you want to be a whole person, not little pieces of you, right? You want to be that whole entity that is just shining, right? Radiating in your uniqueness and your truthfulness, right? So know that if you choose to stay within those confines of safety, you are dulling yourself. And the universe didn't create you to be dull. It wants you to be bright and shine. So, moving into our next phase is always do it right the first time. Okay, I had a tough time getting that out. Do it right the first time. And what this means is that if you're acting erratically and out of reaction, and you are treating people, manipulating people, just not being truthful with other people, and then you realize it later, you have to go back and make it right. Right? So say you were short with someone at work, right? You were just frustrated. You were trying to get something done. This person was asking you a question on how to do something, and you're just like, go figure out how to do it yourself. And then later in the day, after you've relaxed, you got what you needed to be done. And you realize, oh man, I really shouldn't have talked to Stacy that way. Right, I gotta go. I'll go apologize to her. And then you spend 20 minutes trying to find Stacy, and then you have to sit down and you have to have an awkward conversation. I'm really sorry that I acted this way. So we see where this is going, right? So we want to make sure that we do it right the first time. When I got my first big job right out of school, I was third assistant to a commercial photographer. And after a while, I worked up to second assistant. And the first assistant would always say to me, don't rush through it all. Always take your time to do it right the first time. Because if I didn't, I would have to go back, take extra time. And even though it feels like it's taking extra time to do it right the first time, it's going to matter, right? So that we're not, trying to rush through something and do it wrong again, and then we're rushing and then we do it wrong again. So being able to do things right the first time, you are taking the steps, right? You are taking those deep breaths, right? Say Stacy comes over, you're all frustrated, you're trying to get something done, and she asks you something. And instead of go figure out how to do it yourself, you take a couple breaths and say, all right, I just need to pause for a moment, and then, say, Stacy, what do you need, right? And then situation is taken care of, you can go back to what you were doing, and then you wouldn't have to have wasted that time. You could have went outside for a walk, done something, self-expressive, right? Instead of self-indulgent, right? So doing something right the first time. Good. So we've been talking a lot about, this truthfulness and showing up for other people in this second yama of truthfulness. But what about the lies that we tell ourselves, right? I know I do this a lot because I watch myself do it a lot. And then I have to go back in and say, Gwen, no, come on. Do better, right? It is easy to constantly manipulate, right? Have you ever told a lie, right? And then you had to tell a couple more lies to cover up over the first lie that you did. And then you got to tell more lies to cover up the couple other lies that you had to tell to cover up the first lie. And then it's this ongoing, spiraling out of control lie place that we brought ourselves into, right? That's kind of what we do within our heads, right? So try to be very truthful and honest with yourself. And if you cannot be, this is a great time to ask yourself, why am I lying to myself, right? Why can I not trust myself, right? Why am I feeling like I am, risking something in order to lie to myself, right? And make sure or ask yourself why I cannot keep these promises that I am making to myself, right? All this stuff is huge, right? Why am I manipulating myself in the face of truthfulness, right? So a lot of times this can be very scary because when we believe we are a certain type of person and then something questions that, what happens is we start to lose a sense of ourself. And to a lot of people, that is a very scary thing, right? Who am I, right? And when we can't trust ourselves and be honest with ourselves, then how are we going to be able to do that with anybody else, right? Same thing with love, right? How are we supposed to love anybody else if we don't love ourselves? Like authentically, pure, raw love, right? Pure love, honesty, right? All of those things, the innocenceness of it is so important to us as a human being. So we must be willing to take the risk to tell ourselves the truth and grow ourselves into someone who can trust themselves. Right? So this work is to be able to know that everything that comes from you is from a place of goodness, is a place of right intention, because then you won't have to go back, right? Have you so one of the big things for human beings in this realm of um, self-love is forgiving yourself from acts of violence or non-truthfulness that you have performed on yourself. And the more you do those things, the more you're going to have to forgive, and the more you're going to have to build up enough understanding and trust to be able to trust yourself. I've had, many times, people have taken advantage of me or lied to me. It takes so long for me to be able to trust that person again. So why would it be any different with yourself, right? If you are acting in a way that is not growing yourself or evolving yourself and dulling your light, then it's going to be so hard for you to move into a space of being honest with yourself and to trust yourself. So start simply, right? Just start to pay attention to how you are. And these little acts of non-truthfulness that we perform in our day-to-day activity, just take note of them and start to change them up. And again, enjoy being yourself. Enjoy being your unique you, right? It does suck, right, when you do not like yourself, right? How are you supposed to have a really heartfelt conversation with anybody if you can't have that with yourself? Okay, so again, everything comes from here, right? So know that when we work with all of these beautiful ethical guidelines, it all comes from a source, and you're the source, right? Same thing with our consciousness. Consciousness has to have content, right? And a human being, that content is a lot, right? So our consciousness becomes a lot at times. So the next phase that we're going to go into is truth is fluid, right? So it doesn't look the same for everybody. Everybody's path is different, right? And it should be, right? That's what keeps everything interesting. Our seeing is limited by all the groups that shape us, as well as by our experience, right? So we have this to work with, right? I always say the reason why I give a lot of personal examples is because I only have this to go off of, right? I don't know what anyone else is thinking. I can't jump into their head. I can't jump into their body. So I have to have a reference point, and my reference point is me, just like your reference point is you, right? So how do we want our reference point to be? And how do we want our reference point to help us along in our life, right? So our truth is fluid, right? So truthfulness asks a hugeness from us, a integrity from us, because stepping into truthfulness is stepping into a act saying that no matter what, I am going to show up within that truthfulness. It is a connection, right, with life. So, to be a bold person, right, of truth, is to constantly look for what we are not seeing and to expose ourselves to different views than the ones we hold sacred. This is huge, so huge. So if we are only putting ourselves in certain situations, we are only going to have the reference point of those situations, right? So this is a big thing with fear, right? So if we have a lot of fear in our life and fear is keeping us from a lot of experiences, our reference section within ourselves starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? We want our reference section in ourselves to start to expand. That is evolving the self, right? So, what are you not seeing because you are seeing what you are seeing? Right? I'll read that again because it is a phenomenal quote, right? What are you not seeing because you are seeing what you are seeing? So think about that one. That's a good one. It's a really good one. So if we are only putting ourselves in these safety zones, right? So one of the things, another reference point, another example, when I used to work as a food photographer and food stylist, right? I worked with someone who was just not a nice person, right? And because I saw that person all the time, right, a good part of my life, I started to pick up on that and to become a not nice person as well, right? So I didn't like that because I know that I really want to be a genuinely nice person, right? So we have to pay attention to who we choose to be around, right? Because those people influence us, right? So that's why our reference point within ourselves needs to be one that we love, or else we're going to act out of that. We're going to be influenced by that, right? So that's why I do this work, right? Because I want to know that the reference point from which I express my life through is going to better maybe the people that are around me, or just know that every act that I perform within an experience of my life is coming from a really good place, so that I don't have to question my actions, so I don't have to go back. I'm doing it right the first time. So be that bold person, right? It is so important because you got this one life, right? So truth has weight to it. It totally does. And we all have been around those people that we highly respect, the people that we know are going to tell us the truth whenever we ask. Those people have weight to them. They're not wishy-washy, right? Someone who doesn't set up rules for themselves or boundaries, right? They're wishy-washy. It's hard. It's hard to be around those people when one day they're saying this and then the next day they're saying something that completely contradicts this, what they said the other day, right? That doesn't have any weight. That's like fluff. It's like clouds, right? People who honor themselves, honor their lives, have weight to it. They have some rockness to them, right? A rock that is not going to be shook, right? So that's what we mean when we say truth has weight to it, right? Because there's so much defined by just being a truthful person, right? You're honest, you have respect, right? There's so many things that come along with showing up and meeting an experience free of all those other things that are going to dull the experience. Right? So showing up for yourself, it takes integrity, right? And practicing truthfulness, it takes the ordinariness of life and kind of spices it up, right? Because when we act within truthfulness, we're going to act within truthfulness if we are washing the dishes or going for a walk with a friend, or just meeting all the different challenges of life, right? So just like Ahimsa, right? Nonviolence, Satya requires profound courage, to be kind and to have that willingness, to be raw with reality, and show up for however it is, right? It's very easy if there's a situation and we don't like the situation to manipulate the situation. But to be able to stand there within the dislike and find acceptance around it, that is truthfulness. And it takes no energy to do that. Right? You're there witnessing, seeing the reality of the truthfulness instead of being like, oh, I need to manipulate this. This isn't going to go on my way, right? It takes extra energy, right? And then you might be having to, back it up with some more lies, back it up with some more lies, right? So we want to avoid all of that, right? So sometimes it takes a lot of courage, right, to show up and do that thing, but it's so worth it, right? And the more you do it, the more you practice it, it just becomes how you are, right? That effort won't be needed anymore, and it just becomes how you are. Because the practice, you are like that sponge, right, that can just suck it all in and then become what it is, right? Good. So if we are having trouble understanding ourselves around truthfulness, we need to ask ourselves some good questions, right? Always asking the good questions, because when we ask the questions, we need to produce an answer, right? And our answer should come from that beautiful place of honesty and rawness and truthfulness. And like I always say, you're working with this with yourself. So why would you lie to yourself? Why would you be dishonest with yourself? Right? No one can get into your head. Right? No one can hear your thoughts. So be honest with yourself. Don't be embarrassed. You are doing it to better yourself. So don't be embarrassed by it, right? And really, what is embarrassment, right? Fear, right? So allowing yourself to step into that that predicament is only going to evolve you, right? So what are you so afraid of, right? Sometimes it is that fear of losing a sense of the self. But guess what? If you lose a sense of the self, you can always create more or build it back up. Remember, you are the builder, you are the creator, you are the destroyer of yourself, right? So don't be afraid of losing a sense of the self, because you can always create it again and even make it better, right? So ask yourself, what would my life look like if I entered into every situation, every experience with that boldness of showing up and being truthful? What kind of life would that look like for you? And is it going to be better, right, than the one that you're walking right now? So the power of truth. Right? It has so much power, so much power. I truly believe that truthfulness has the power to move mountains. Right? And so when I was thinking about this, right, truthfulness has the power to spark love, create peace. And then I was thinking, oh my gosh, truthfulness also has the power to create war. Right? But no, it doesn't. Truthfulness will never create anything bad. Right? It is because we didn't start the issue at the beginning, right? We didn't enter into the experience at the beginning. If we did and entered it in with truthfulness, then there would not be a war, happening at all, right? When the conflict happens, it is because there was injustice to these yamas before. Right? So when starting with truthfulness at the beginning, right, in dealing with others, right, there is no past. Right? So then, therefore, truthfulness will always reign supreme. But if we are starting with truthfulness, we have to hold whatever, if we are entering into truthfulness in the middle of a situation or experience, then we have to hold the situation with a lot of compassion and a lot of very deep understanding around, and having a lot of clarity around it. Right? So sometimes we might have to remove ourselves from the situation to be able to see it very clearly and then enter back into it with truthfulness and rawness, the way that we are going to approach it with that peace, right? And that rawness, right? So the power of truth, right? So I'm going to leave us with a very powerful quote by Gandhi. Gandhi said his life was an experiment with truth. Right? So an experiment with truth. So he was always trying to walk that line of truthfulness, always. And finding a lot of peace by doing that, right? Because we are human beings, right? And sometimes it's very hard. It's very hard to be truthful with ourselves and with others. But remember, the small steps we take towards truthfulness will start to become large ones, right? And those large ones will break us open. And then we will be walking that line of truthfulness with ease. So, any questions around Satya, our second Yama? Please reach out. You can reach us at lavendercoilyoga.com or lavendercoilyoga@gmail.com. And please like and subscribe if you are enjoying these talks. Again, these are beautiful reminders, or this could be a way for us to just start dabbling, right? Dabbling with the ethical guidelines of yamas. So again, my name is Gwen Heiser. I own Lavender Koi Yoga in Berlin, New Jersey, and this is Aha Moments with the Koi. Our next one will be dropping in a couple of weeks, and that will be our third Yama. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Namaste.